And after some of its worst violence in a decade, insurance say July riots in South Africa cost the country $1.7 billion. That's about 25 billion rand in damages. Some economists say President Ramaphosa must convince investors that South Africa is a safe investment destination that applies the law without fear or favor. Let's have a conversation on this with Matt Kiniger, Associate Practice Lead Sub-Saharan Africa at Docker Frontier in London. Hello, Matt. Good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for having me on the program today.
Good afternoon. Well, South Africa's second quarter GDP data released earlier this month showed a rebound in economic activity. However, forecasts from Intellidex expect the events to shave a further 0.7% of its GDP. A number of them, many believe that the growth-starved economy can, ill afford it. When do you think full effects of July's unrest be reflected in economic data?
Yeah, certainly. So the sort of big economic data story recently has been the second quarter GDP data that was released earlier this month. It did show healthier than expected activity. So export-oriented industries, including manufacturing, mining, as well as hospitality, all did better than expected. So the economy grew by nearly 20% year on year, which suggests that there is a bit of a recovery from the lockdowns last year taking place. But certainly the data doesn't reflect July's unrest. We have already seen some data points starting to come through. So, for example, retail sales data for July has recently been published, and we saw a very sharp decline in retail sales activity in July. So certainly a reflection of GDP data that is set to come. We've also had a decline in business confidence, so as reflected by business surveys such as the Purchasing Managers Index, which reflects sentiment and activity in the private sector. That fell to the lowest level since August 2020. So certainly businesses as well as retail data is starting to reflect the impact of the disruption caused by July's unrest. But in terms of GDP data, we won't see any data released until December this year. So certainly the full extent of the disruption won't be fully released until later this year. Our view here at Frontier View is that we would expect the economy to contract in terms of quarter-on-quarter growth. So we would expect the economy to contract in Q3, followed by a stabilization in Q4.
Now, the short-term implications of July's unrest are becoming clear, but how do you expect the unrest to affect South Africa's long-term growth prospects?
Certainly. So, we can talk a lot about the short-term implications, but South Africa's growth performance was already weak before COVID-19. So the country entered the pandemic from a position of weakness. The unrest in July has really aggravated the weaknesses that the economy is facing. So South Africa has major structural economic problems with extremely high unemployment, amongst the highest in the world, severe electricity shortages, increasingly fragile public finances. These things won't be directly affected by July's unrest. However, public finances would likely deteriorate faster than we were previously forecasting. So what we are expecting over the next year or so is the government to be forced to raise taxes sooner than it expected, partly to pay for a bigger social support bill. So the government is likely to raise spending on social support, including unemployment benefits, social payments to vulnerable households. This is almost directly in response to July's unrest. So certainly weaker public finances. There's also going to be a negative implication for South Africa's standing globally. So foreign investment in South Africa, we don't think it will. Foreign direct investment is unlikely to collapse, but we would expect foreign direct investment to slow down slow down in 2021 and also grow a lot slower than previously expected in 2022. Overall, what this means is here at Frontier View, we have downgraded our medium-term growth view for South Africa. We would expect the economy to grow by less than 2% over the next couple of years as a result.
And South Africa was already facing record high unemployment before the unrest. So how will the labor market be affected over the coming months?
Yeah, so this is probably one of the most direct implications of the unrest. So South Africa, Q2 unemployment data in South Africa already reflects the impact of weakness in the economy overall. So unemployment rose to a record high of 34% in Q2. We expect when Q3 data is released over the next couple of months, we would expect unemployment to reach another record high. So what this is going to do is make the labor market a lot more fragile. So there will be much higher structural unemployment, mainly because of the destruction of workplaces that was caused by July's unrest. So significant increases in unemployment, much weaker consumer spending as a result. But we also expect the government to temper or sort of slow down the pace at which it wants to cut civil service wages, partly because of the rise in unemployment. So there will be some compensation for the rise in private sector unemployment by relatively strong increases in civil service wages. But overall, we are expecting the labor market to become increasingly fragile over the next few months or so.
All right, thanks, Matt. Matt Kindiger is Associate Practice Lead Sub-Saharan Africa at Frontier View in London. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks very much.